Thank you, everybody, and I am super happy to be here. It's been, I think, 3 or 4 years since I was actually I was actually in New York and presenting last time. Before I get started, I'm going to do some, the disclaimers. I am not being paid for this. I'm not being encouraged from anybody. All the thoughts are my own to protect patient confidentiality. Where I didn't get permission from the patients, I have disguised or changed their details so you won't know who they are. And we can get started. So, as mentioned, my name is David Parker, and I am the founder of a company called Wishplay. For the last 4 years, I've been able to use virtual reality in hospitals and hospices, and for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to talk about, my background and how I got into the virtual reality. I'm going to cover some pretty spectacular use cases that I think you guys are going to like, and then I'm going to show how I was able to make virtual reality scalable through training. But really, for the next 20 minutes, what I really want you to be able to get out of this is virtual reality really is something that you can be used as a tool, and it does have quite an impactful application within healthcare. Before I do that, I'm actually going to give you an idea of what I did in virtual reality and how I got started, and I'm actually going to get a friend of mine to explain it to you. Right. So as you can see, I've got the best job in the world. I get to work with kids, and I get to work with adults, and I get to grant wishes using virtual reality. Before this, I used to be a systems architect. I used to work for big banks and telcos, and I would work on the bleeding edge stuff. I would like minority report like stuff. I would do things like biometrics, artificial intelligence, and there was an issue though. I realized that I wasn't actually happy. I was working on all this cool technology, but I wasn't doing anything that made a difference. I didn't actually leave an impact, and even worse, I was actually using technology, I think, for bad. I was getting people to buy more stuff. I was racking up more debt for people by using this technology in such a way. And I know, right? So, and at the same time, around the same time, I got one of these things for Christmas, and I had tried it on, and what I was able to do is after I took it off, I looked over and I saw Nana, and I said, Nana, did you want to try this? And as you can tell by Nana, she was pretty adventurous, and she said yes. And so I was like, did you want it? What would you like to see? And so what she wanted to see is she wanted to be able to see Venice, and she wanted to go on a gondola ride, and that's what we were able to do. And so within about 20 seconds, Nana starts to cry, and Nana's crying, and this is exactly what you want on Christmas morning. You've got your in-laws looking at you, Nana's crying, and but she raised her hand and she's like, no, it was actually from happiness. You see, she wouldn't be able to travel anymore, and all of a sudden she could actually experience what it was like to go to Venice. And then it hit me, oh my God, I want to make Nanas cry all over the world. No, I wanted to grant wishes, right? That's what I wanted to do. wish fulfillment. That's what I realized that I wanted to do. And so what I thought of was, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually volunteer at hospitals. And not only am I going to volunteer at hospitals, I'm going to supply all the gear because I know how to use it. And so it was going to be easy. It was not. It was not easy. Finally, when I was able to even have a hospital that would listen to me, I had to go through infection control. I had to see if it was possible, go through all the research. Is this going to hurt anybody? And we were able to realize that no, it was already being used in hospital settings, that it was safe. And so we were able to do a pilot, and I was able to finally start volunteering. And I can tell you, it was magical. That experience that I had with Nana, that was actually the same thing that kept on happening. That experience with Nana was truly magical. But then I realized that I couldn't use YouTube as the vehicle to be able to show these wishes. And so what I actually did is I actually went out and got my own camera, and I taught myself how to use this camera. And that was, then I could actually create bespoke wishes. I didn't even have to just show, the Great Wall of China from a YouTube. I could actually then start to show things like home and some really, really, meaningful things. And I think a great example of this was at Emily's house, which was a hospice for children. And you see, what I realized was these kids, they're not going to be able to go trick-or-treating. And I was like, no, you know what? No, I think yes. So what I did was we got a whole street, a full whole street in Toronto, and we dressed up the kids and we dressed up the houses, and we got the kids to go trick-or-treating, and I filmed it. And of course the kids loved it. That means that they're going to get Halloween twice. And so I was able to film it, and I was able to bring it into to the kids at the hospice, and that was, the laughter and the excitement and all the things that come with Halloween, they were able to experience that. And of course, the biggest thing about Halloween is the candy. And so when they took the headset off, the same bag that was in the video was waiting for them. And the same candy that they had actually put into the bag was actually in that bag. And look at her face. She was just so happy. Right. And I was so happy. And so then I knew what I was going to do was I'm all in. This is when Wishplay became really a company, and I was able to do no more volunteering. This is what I was dedicating myself to. And that's really where, the hard work really started. And it wasn't just for palliative. It was for many more things. Like, this is Reggie, and Reggie had Alzheimer's, and Reggie was nonverbal. So he couldn't, he was an architect. And so even though he talked, it was just noises and architectural terms. And so you couldn't really understand him. And so it was very, very important that you were actually watching for cues and seeing if he liked it or not. And you could tell that he actually did, he enjoyed it. But once I started to show him more and more architectural things or different buildings, wow, then he really lit up. Then it was like this it was transformational. And so, I was able to then, I was talking with the family, and the family said, could you show him some parks? I'm like, parks, like what, like just city parks? I'm like, yeah, sure, I can show him. Why? And it turned out that every day for lunch, Reggie would go and sit, and he would sit at this park and eat his lunch. And so I was like, absolutely, sure, I can show him some parks. But even better, I'm going to show him his park. And that's what I did. I went and filmed it. And I could see, looking around, that there was really only one place that Reggie would be able to sit. So I filmed it from his sort of, perspective. And when I brought it back and I put the headset onto Reggie, like, he recognized it right away. And what was even more, what happened was he started to talk, but I could understand him. He started to talk about the park. And it was, it wasn't for longer than 5 minutes, but we could understand what he was saying, and he was talking, and you could really see why this park was important to him. And I really believe that, if there was going to be a wish for him, that would have been his wish. It was just it was just amazing. So, it can be used as a bridge to be able to bridge the, something that's past. And I think this image is great because it shows, it's kind of foggy and cloudy, and you can bring him into, what he wants to see. But it can also be used, virtual reality can also be used almost like a proverbial carrot. Some of the nurses caught on and they started to change bandages while the patients were in the headsets. Or some of them were actually using them so that, some of the patients, they wouldn't sit in their wheelchairs for very long, or they wouldn't take their medicine, and they would actually use virtual reality as a way to be able to do those things. And so this is Steve. And so Steve had a stroke, and it was very, very important for Steve for rehabilitation is to do his physiotherapy, but he just wouldn't do his physiotherapy. No. So one day I came in and I was unloading the gear, and then I put a set of weights onto the bed, and he got pissed. Like, he was angry. Steve was, I had gone from the guy that was bringing him fun and doing, these wishes to all of a sudden the enemy, and he didn't want to, and he started yelling, get out, take those weights with you. And I'm like, what weights? What are you talking about, Steve? And he's like, the weights, get those things out of here. And I'm like, what are you, no, those aren't weights. Those are ski poles. Look at that. He used to be a ski instructor. And so you notice that he's not actually putting his elbows against him. He's actually holding them out. And, it's so that virtual reality can actually be used as a tool, right? It can be used as a tool that makes a difference. But sometimes what you can, I just realized that is probably the worst picture that I could use if you're ever in a hospital and they've got those things as the gear, run. I will, sometimes you can, it's not about tools or, a bridge or using it. Sometimes you can it's just about doing the right thing. And so this is Carl. And Carl was, he was from out east. And, they had moved to Toronto to be closer to the wife's family so that they could support the wife, and the wife could then support Carl. He was dying, and we got along great. We were the same age. We were both from out east. We both had, 2 girls, and his wish was just to be back on the ocean. And so that's what I was able to do. I was able to put him back on the ocean and let him see all the different things. And the big thing was that I would do it week after week. And so I could get to show him different things. And I think that's a big thing is it wasn't just about, it's not like Make-A-Wish where, it's one time. I would go back week after week after week. And so I would be able to tailor these experiences. And so, yes, you get their wish, but I would also be there, and they wouldn't just be alone. And I think that's really important. And so I really got to know him. And then one time he came to me and he was freaking out, and he was actually crying. And I'm like, Carl, what's the matter? And he said to me, he's like, Dave, my kids, they're never going to get to know me. I'm like, what? And so as I said, like he's got 2 kids under 2. And he realized that even though he had written the letters and he had done videos of congratulating on weddings and doing those kind of things, he realized that he was just going to be essentially another YouTube character to his kids. They're never really going to get to know what he was like because they're just too young to know him. Okay, that's not going to fly with me. So what do I do? Is of course I do what I always do. I grabbed the camera and we filmed them for 2 days, and we asked about who he was and his history and all of the different things that he could remember, and we covered those factual things. I was born on, and I went to these schools, and all the things that were factual. But we also covered all of the knowledgeable things, the things that that the memories and the stories, his first girlfriend, that, the time that he stole a car when he was 14. And I was like, dude, I don't think I need to know that one. But his kids did, right? And so we covered all of these things. And I took all of this footage, and I brought it home, and I started to edit. And I mean, it was so hard. You see, I mean, not only was he my friend, but it was, I had switched. When I deliver the wishes, it's going out and getting these great experiences. Now I've got the history of my friend, and I'm trying to put it all together. And I mean, I was a wreck. I had to. There was actually this song. There was a song that their family would sing whenever there was a nightmare for kids, or they needed the consoling, and his voice caught, and I was just like, and I'm bawling. I'm bawling, and I'm trying to edit this thing, and my wife is like, "You've got to stop, David, you can't keep it." And I'm like, I have to go on. I can't. If I don't do this now, I can never come back to this. And so I did. I pressured through, and I had to go through all these things. And it was so hard. But I'm so glad that I did, because he did. He passed away, shortly afterwards. And I knew that I was able to do this. And so I kind of realized at that moment that there's really only two wishes. There's the wish of, I want to experience something, the bucket list, I want to go back to the cottage that I saw. There's the experiences. That's one wish. But the other wish is to be remembered. And so it's so important that we were able to do this. And I ran into his wife. I guess it was a month or two later at the hospital, and she was so happy to tell me that she was able to watch the videos. And what made it a big thing was that it allowed for her to be able to let not just her kids, but the grandkids and the great grandkids and everybody, the family, to know who Carl was. And they would actually get to really get to know him. And that was just magical. But the other thing was that every day she would actually go in and she would watch just about 5 minutes of these videos, because for just 5 minutes, things were normal. And that would allow her just to get through the day. And so, as you can see, there are so many things that there are so many uses for the wishes, and I think there's a lot of applications that can really have these impacts. And just as we start to get going, all of a sudden, we're delivering wishes, and all of a sudden, COVID hits, and then I realize that I'm not scalable. I'm not allowed into the hospitals. I'm not allowed to do this anymore, because no one's allowed. People aren't even allowed to have their family in that are dying. And I'm like, oh my God, this is awful. And so what I did is I needed everything out of my head, and so I made it so I created a methodology. I documented the last 4 years. I put it all in so that I could do all the different steps of how to do all of this stuff. How to prevent motion sickness. Which are the best headsets for you? And I put it into training, and I put it into online training. But of course, what do you think I did? I did what I always do. I created, I was able to film myself, and it's almost like Inception, where you can actually put the headset on and learn how to use virtual reality by actually using virtual reality. Like, how cool is that? And what I was able to do then is I'm able to now pass this on. I was able to pass on the torch. But in so doing, what I was able to do is I don't feel like this guy anymore. That's probably a little too much. Maybe that's a little bit closer, but it doesn't matter how I feel. It's really how these guys feel. Like there's no better feeling in the world. So the question then is, if you have a loved one, how do you do this? or maybe you've got an idea or a problem that you want to be able to solve that you might think that, virtual reality might be able to help. Well, get in touch with me. As you know, I mean, as you can probably tell, like I get very excited about these things, and I love doing this. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my camera and I'm going to do something. But do and know that it can be used in a very, very meaningful way. Questions?
Well, first, David, I have to tell you, I am in awe and extremely inspired.
Thank you.
And emotional, as you can tell.
Yeah, so it is.
Quite the story. Yeah, I told myself I was going to hop back on and not break down. So I'm going to try to stay together.
I'm sorry, but it does.
Impressed. I mean, not only in that you took an idea and went with it, which is always impressive, but that you then turned it into something so meaningful and in so many different ways. So one of the things I was thinking was, first you said, Make-A-Wish is something that people do. And I think I see, we see and we're familiar with that brand. But this to me seemed much more cost effective. Have you, to bring it to a little bit of a business side of things, I mean, is that the case? And then I have a couple other questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, one of the things is that the platforms and everything like that are changing so fast. And so to be able to make it, so the thing that we're doing is we're creating a website where it allows for a community for people who have cameras to be able to help grant wishes for people who have wishes. And so, because I'm not scalable, but then it's also that training is a very important one, is to making sure if you're going to go film, these are the steps that you have to make sure you take. And then if you're going to be putting it onto a loved one, here's what you have to do to make sure that you're doing it safely. And so we're right in the process of actually getting the website done right now. So, yeah.
That's great. I mean, because that was one of the things where I was thinking, what are the areas of opportunity? And then it hit me. Oh yeah, COVID. So you can't go in anymore.
Exactly.
And where do you see your growth opportunities, or what is your wish for Wishplay to expand?
So, I mean, my wish, our mission statement is to make it so that, anybody, anywhere can experience the world, no matter what their circumstances are. And so it gets even more complicated in terms of a business model when I tell you that no patient is ever going to have to pay for this. It's going to be free,
wow.
Right? So then you're like, okay, well then how do you make money off of this?
Right.
And so, and that is that it's going to be done through things like training. So, training hospitals and hospices on how to use this. But it's also, there are, opportunities around sponsorships and things for being able to, March break is a big one where kids, they need to be seeing camps, they need to be doing all this stuff. And so, I'm just one person. How can we film all these things and do those kind of things? And so there are those opportunities as well. Okay. But again, that's why I'm also trying to make sure that it's crowdsourced so that it's not a money thing. It's more about doing a good thing, and so that anybody can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing it.
Absolutely.
And for being here today. So
yeah, absolutely.